I'd like to call to order the July 22nd, 2021 Plan Commission meeting. Could I get a roll call, please?
Yes. Brink.
Here.
Aletsky.
Present.
Kays.
Here.
Culhane.
Here.
Spire.
Here.
Ford.
Here.
And then Dolly, Dargis Johnson, and Hanson are absent. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Third item on the agenda is invitation for public comment participant submittal. If there's anything not on the agenda that someone from the public would wish to talk about, there will be time at the end of the meeting. And please just let city staff know what it is you'd like to talk about. Moving on the agenda is item 4 is the approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion and a second?
So moved. Colleen.
Second. Oletsky.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Fifth item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the July 8th, 2021 meeting. Can I get a motion and a second?
So moved, Case.
Second, Colleen.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Sixth item on the agenda is our regular agenda. 6A is commission consideration of resolution number 2021-32, amending the zoning. Brandy, I'll let you take that over and explain to us where that is.
Okay, sounds good. 1 second.
At the end, I suppose, I don't know.
Because it has to be noticed for. So we'll follow up with you tomorrow and see what we can do, because obviously wanting to keep your project moving forward.
Yeah, it's just an okay for the in-house.
Right.
Okay.
But yeah, we have to get the notice out and everything, so we'll touch base with you and I'll figure out who has the application and where it's at.
Okay.
And go from there.
Okay. Appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. So let me get this pulled up. So the property that we're looking at today, actually for both action items, is at 621st Street Southwest. And this is property that Watertown Development Company owns, and then they sublease it to various businesses. And so what we're looking at, you can see here, this blue highlighted portion is the entirety of the property, which is 6.85 acres. And this actual alley that's shown on GIS, if you guys remember, has previously been vacated. And I think that was, what, already in I have it in the staff report. Let me find it just for knowledge. Oh, in 2020, okay. So it wasn't as long ago as I was thinking. And so what they're wanting to do is rezone it. So we have the entirety of the property is under one zoning district or designation, and that's an ordinance requirement. You can't have split zoning. So now that they're looking at getting a building permit and maybe in an addition, that's when this was caught, and we're just bringing it into the one uniform district. So going from I2 to I1, I2 is heavy industrial and I1 is light industrial. So I1 is actually more restrictive, and you can't have as many, I would say, threatening uses, which is why we obviously have the various districts. I2 requires a larger lot area, which this property does meet, including, the 2 parcels and then the vacated alley there. So they would be able to meet that, but then it also requires greater setbacks, which could be restrictive for additions and whatnot. And especially because of the adjacent zoning designations, you see we have a C3 to the west, highway commercial, and then otherwise has I1 surrounding it on the west and south, and then I2 on the north and east, which a lot of those businesses that are in there today are also, they would be permitted in the I1. So those could also be rezoned, and it's actually a phase out that we like to see with this being in the middle of town. And then if you go further to the north, there's R3, which is multifamily residential. So going from I2 to I1 is really a benefit. And it meets the intent of the comprehensive land use plan and is the same as the adjacent zoning districts too. And even going from I-2 to I-1, that's completely a normal transition.
What is, Brandy, what is the use that's on the property again? I can't remember. What is the business that's there right now?
And actually, it's CUDA. But what do they do?
It's NT Sales and Leasing, that manufactures.
Would you please come up to the microphone and state your name for the record? I will open the public hearing for the record, and
I wasn't done with my presentation. There you go.
The business that's operating there, it's leased to, Michelle Kakachik, Watertown Development Company. It is leased to NT Sales and Leasing, and they do business as CUDA Cleaning Systems. And what they do is they make parts washers, and they actually manufacture those on site. So it's a new business that just came to Watertown last year, and it is growing. So
And that business currently meets the I-1 uses.
yes, it's assembly.
It's permitted.
Permitted, yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Is there a reason why we don't rezone this whole thing I-1? Because I feel like we've been taking chunks out of it since maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Yeah, and it would be something that we would want, but it's also has on a petition basis. So that will happen as redevelopment or building permits or if they want building permits issued, because then they might run into the same issue as WDC found of the larger setbacks that create some challenges.
I guess that would be my one question. Are the other uses on the 4 remaining I-2 lots, are they more of an I-1 use or are they more of an I-2 use?
They are more of an I-1.
So it would be more of just the potential impact from a setback perspective.
Yeah.
But theoretically, if we were to talk to them to migrate to an I-1, we could probably do that and then somehow put some sort of a development agreement that would protect their, because they would be down zoning for them specifically.
Yeah.
There could be some agreements that we can, maybe cut some deals. I think that we would be in our best interest to change the use districts of that, and at the same point in time, relinquish some of the side yard, front yard, rear yard, lot area requirements. If we could make a way to, have a legal opinion on how to do that, I would encourage. I mean, this obviously was the old meat processing plants many, many years ago, and that's why it's zoned I-2. And if we can transition to an I-1, I think it would be a much better situation for the community.
This is probably a Roby question, but I mean, is the only way that you can rezone is upon annexation and petition?
No, the city could actually sponsor rezoning. We do like to have a petition, though. It's a little easier process and work with those owners. That would be the preferred route. Mr. Chair, if I may, just add something here. So we did look at this more comprehensively from a staff standpoint, as you both have suggested, and we do agree with that from a land use perspective. An I-1 may make more sense there, but it would take some time to potentially work with those landowners, and we certainly could make that a goal to do. The reason that we did encourage this applicant to bring forth their petition is they are on a bit of a time frame, as they would like to expand their business, and they would like to begin to do that, I believe, this fall.
Yeah, and that's something too, that there's a lot of properties that to make them match up with the comprehensive land use plan would need a rezone, but it's usually on the heels of them wanting to do something with the property and it's not working. So then it's we just deal with it at that time.
Yeah, I know historically we've initiated some changes to some rezonings over the years just to comport with the plan, comport with the existing land use that's going on there, reducing the number of variance applications that have to come in and those sorts of things. And
before coming forward with the variance, we would encourage that they would rezone, but it is also putting together staff time for the petitions. It is quite time restrictive, and reaching out to them and then having to present them with the benefits. And, and sometimes you get pushed back and it falls through anyway. if it can work out, like you've mentioned, how we have brought a couple of those, it is, I mean, in this, there's not that many property owners, but it also just because of the time frame and these guys wanting to develop.
I just remember when we did the R2A zoning years ago, and there was hundreds and hundreds of landowners that we contacted and reached out to and did that. And in the end, we can still rezone their property even if they don't like the idea of it too. So, I mean, we have that ability.
I'm personally okay with doing it kind of one by one as they come forward with a building permit. I think when they come forward with a building permit and realize that their option to, continue doing what they are doing, because most of those are, I think all of those would qualify as permitted uses in the I-1. So to continue doing what they are doing, but with less setbacks, I think at that time they would petition to do it. I hate the idea of us trying to force it on them. I just know that, that can sometimes stir up a pot that, otherwise there's, not an issue. I know we tried to do a plan commission recommendation to rezone along 81 between 12th and 14th about 7 years ago, and we kind of thought that would be a slam dunk to commercial, and that got a lot more pushback than we thought there would. And it was one of those things where maybe just let it happen one at a time would be the most conducive way to do it. There's only, looks like 4 properties left.
I know you guys have a lot on your plate, but it is something that we can think of that can make your lives easier and our lives easier moving forward. I think we should always take advantage of opportunities.
Yeah, and that forward thinking, and if we could solve the issues before they happen, that's where it always is a case by case scenario of when they come in, and then we would look at it and we would encourage, like we did with these guys, do the rezone instead of asking for the variance, and then you're conforming and it's meeting the intent of what they're wanting to do and what works well for the city and meeting our comp plan too. So, yeah, it case by case basis is typically how we have to handle the applications because it's, ongoing of various applicants. So, and it's always at the time when it's the discussion is easier when they're approaching us with wanting to do something rather than, because it's existing like this today, and that's fine because everything that's allowed in the I-1 is allowed in the I-2. And so it just makes it a better discussion, I guess, of trying to better their property as they're trying to better theirs as well. So that usually works best.
So just for my education here and knowledge, is there a difference in the tax revenue between the zonings if you change it from I-2 to I-1? Is that going to impact any kind of the revenue for the municipality?
No.
No? Okay.
And that would be like Director of Equalization would make that call, but
Basically, you're either ag or non-ag.
Yeah.
Taxation.
Okay.
And I always, from an education standpoint, taxing and zoning, never the two shall meet. So you always, I never try
Sure.
to put the two together.
It's been good discussion. The public hearing is open. If there's anyone else in the public that wishes to comment, I don't see anyone else here with us, but if there's anyone online that wishes to comment on this. Hearing none, is there any other further discussion or questions that the Planning Commission has to the applicant?
I'd just like to add that we did receive one person, an adjacent landowner, that came into the office and was interested in the project and did request some information, but did not express concerns. So took the information.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Hearing that, I will close the public hearing and ask for a motion and a second for discussion.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion from the board members? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 6B on the agenda is commission consideration of resolution number 2021-33, the plat of Lot 8A, Block 3 of the Watertown Development Company. Brandy, would you take that over, please?
Yes, thank you, Jeff. So This is the replat of the two, combining the two parcels and then the vacated right-of-way that WDC is the owner of all, or is the proprietor of. And so things, it's pretty straightforward. Things just to note is you'll see here that the 10-foot wide utility easement granted by the plat of Watertown Development Company Edition released by this plat. So that actually, WDC acquired the south 32 feet of lot 7. Well, and they actually probably own that too. But so then now that is being added to this lot, that 32 feet. So you can see here the old lot line used to run where I'm running my pointer. And then an ordinance requirement is that you have 5-foot side yard setbacks on abutting the lot line. So that's why it's a 10-foot easement that's being vacated. But then it is also being relocated to that north property line, which is, and they did 10 feet because they're taking 10 feet away so that utilities would be able to utilize that. I did reach out to Watertown Municipal Utilities as well as private utility companies, and there were no concerns. I think there was one line that was relocated already, and that was like Vast.
Yeah, that's CenturyLink.
Okay, yeah, so either Vast or CenturyLink, but they worked with them already on relocating that. But then there is still, the easement will still be provided if utilities are needed to be ran through there. So otherwise, it's meeting the minimum lot size requirements for the I-1 zone. It meets it for the I-2 as well, and I-2 requires 220,000 square feet, and I-1 requires 30,000. So, and this lot is, quick math here on 6.85 acres. I know I have it somewhere in the staff report. 298,386 square feet. So it's exceeding. And the existing structure with the setbacks, we're not creating any nonconformities. So it's all good. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. When I look at this plat, is this one that could be done administratively? Is there something that's set out that makes us need to look at it? I know, like, usually I look for, right away or something.
Yes, so this one, because we are vacating, even the easement, because it's not being used, we could do that administratively, but we just thought, since we're bringing the rezone anyway, just to bring it so you guys see what we're doing.
No, and that's perfectly fine. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't something I was missing, because when I looked at it, I thought, I'm not sure why, it's coming to us, but it makes sense that we did the rezone. We're looking at the plat as well, so thank you for that.
Yep, good question.
Are there any other questions or comments from the board? I don't need to open a public hearing for a plat.
Nope.
So can I get a motion and a second for approval? Got a motion? Can I get a second?
Second, Spire.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. All right, 7th item on the agenda is open public comment. Got some city staff shaking their head that we didn't get any, so.
Nope.
Moving on to item 8 is new business. Do you have any new business for us?
None that I have.
Stacy, do we want to just give a 2-minute overview of what's going on in the weedy world?
We sure can. Thank you, Commissioner Kays. So there is a committee that has been established to look at putting together a permanent medical cannabis ordinance, and it would be to regulate the 4 uses that are associated with medical cannabis. The first being a medical dispensary, the second being a cultivation facility, the third being a testing facility, and the fourth being a processing or manufacturing facility. So we have a draft put together. We've been working with Todd closely and with First District, and they have graciously prepared some maps that are showing some setbacks from some protected uses. The protected uses range a bit with distances and things, but the protected uses would include schools, which is written into the state administrative rules, and that would be 1,000-foot setback from a dispensary. And then there are also a number of other uses that we're considering in the draft, all draft form, that would be protected uses, including licensed daycares, public parks, libraries, things of that nature. And residential zones, yes. So the draft right now allows for dispensaries within the C1, the C2, or the C3. But if you take out the setbacks, again in draft form, the majority of the area that would be unencumbered would fall within the C3, predominantly along 212. Again, it's all very high level, very draft form. Anything can be changed at this point in time. Again, for some of the other uses, the cultivation facility and the processing or manufacturing facility, those are the heavier uses where you would see potential impacts to residential, mostly in the way of odor, I understand. So there are some setback requirements from residences and things of that nature. Testing facilities, they have a smaller setback, but all of those three uses, they would be potentially allowable by a special permitted use, so long as they meet the setback requirements of the protected uses, and that would be the I-1 or the I-2 district. So all in draft form at this point. We do have a tentative time frame for this. We'd like to finish this draft up and get final committee approval by August 5th. If we can do that, then we would like to have a new business item that would essentially give you a look at the draft on August 5th at our next meeting. And then I believe August 16th, potential first reading. And then the 19th, would be another regular plan commission meeting, and that would it would be here for your recommendation and approval. And then second reading September 7th, I believe, which would in fact, if all of that works out according to the plan, then it could be effective by October 1st, and we're anticipating the state may have their rules in place by October 4th, I believe, somewhere in that vicinity. So that's a really high level. I failed to mention the joint ordinance, so that's something that maybe I'll let Commissioner Kays expand on just a little bit, but we will likely be having another joint meeting to take a look at that. So
No pun intended. We'll have to get in the weeds. Basically, on the joint side, of the joint jurisdictional side of the ordinance, I know Mr. Luke Muller is currently working on drafting a proposed regulation that would restrict no medical cannabis facilities, dispensaries, cultivation, manufacturing, testing in the joint jurisdictional area. The county, as well as the city, are mandated by IM26 that they each have to have at least one dispensary location in each jurisdiction. And so the county will probably relegate dispensaries somewhere in one of the other commercial districts that's not in the joint jurisdictional area at this time. And so that's going to have to be done as well. So both the city, the county, and the joint jurisdiction areas are all in line by that first part of October.
Could that be in one of the area towns?
No. Each one of the towns has to have a dispensary location as well.
Really? Okay. I got another question. Cultivation, that's always going to be inside?
Yes, the administrative rules at the state say that it has to be cultivated within a building, and it has to have security and fencing. And what we're doing, and what Stacy would probably tell you as well, is we are looking at relying solely on the state security, some of their citing requirements that they're doing in the administrative rules. They're going through this process. We, at a later date, if we wanted to be more restrictive, we could always come in, but we're just, rather than having that discussion now where we don't have that time element, we may revisit that further down the road. This is just to at least, Katie, bar the bell, the barn door, so that we just can be ready.
Is it gonna be a state position, the person that comes and does the testing?
No,
Or is it gonna be a
no,
county
I,
employee, a government employee?
no, more likely the testing facilities are going to be private-run facilities. Me and my buddies, and we get a couple of, chemical engineers, and we hire them, and we may have a location where it's marijuana is brought to that facility and tested, or we maybe have portable facilities to go to those growing centers and test it.
How often are they gonna test at each center?
Well, if I'm growing the marijuana, I'm going to want to be testing it all the time because it has to be tagged. It has a certain THC levels that you have to be
So
at.
it has to stop at a certain level.
From a practical standpoint, do we anticipate that we will actually see anything other than dispensaries here? Or I can foresee, like, given that the potentials with interstate travel, that maybe that everything has to be kind of done locally, or as opposed to sort of like all the production happens in Colorado or California and it gets shipped in here on bundles, and all the testing has occurred in Nebraska or.
I think initially you're going to see a predominance of dispensaries because the cannabis won't be readily available for the supply chain aspect. But I'm currently aware of at least 7 or 8 different entities and or individuals that are looking at doing it through the 11 counties that I work in as far as growing and manufacturing. So and that's one thing that Stacy talked about when we were having our meetings, is that, while Watertown is a manufacturing community, and we want to make sure that we have opportunities for people to exercise different types of manufacturing, whether it's widgets or weed, and it's legal in the state of South Dakota. That's something that we were being very conscious about in making sure that there were areas. Now, the Development Corporation might want to put in restrictive covenants that would restrict that type of activity on their lands. I mean, that's completely up to whoever's doing the development. But the city is going to take the position that 70% of the populace voted for medical cannabis in this state. If medical cannabis can be manufacturing facilities, will have property tax generation, there'll be sales tax generation, there'll be all kinds of, I guess if you want to talk about those positive spins to cannabis.
Certainly, the intent of the staff draft at this point, and that's all it is a staff draft. The committee is working on reviewing it and potentially having some more comments, like I said. So the intent, though, of getting this put together was to balance some additional protections for the community with the ability and provide the opportunity for some of these businesses to indeed locate within the community in a place that we feel is reasonable. It wouldn't have a lot of negative impacts on the residential development and other uses.
We talked about that at the committee level. We threw out some footages that we thought, well, that sounds okay. And then when we ran the analysis in-house, it actually, I think, pretty much reflected what everybody was thinking when we add those footages and those separation distances, that it will allow for opportunities, primarily along 212. There's several blocks in the uptown area. Most of Kemp is a no. Maybe about 1 block where you could maybe put a dispensary, but most of it's going to be along First Avenue North that we see if we follow those guidelines. And maybe
Dispensary.
for a dispensary.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
And when you guys, you said 1,000 feet from the protected uses, and then just for proximity, that's like 0.12 miles. So, not a quarter mile, just just to give you some proximity.
Good 3
Yeah,
blocks,
so-
about 3 blocks, you know.
Yeah, 1,000 feet would be something that's in the state administrative rules right now. So we just tried to make ours consistent with that. And that would be from any public or private schools, including licensed preschools.
So, yeah, that's one we were talking about too. I mean, the state the state through IM 26 has basically dictated all time, place, and manner or zoning activities to local units of government. But there is a 1,000-foot setback that's been put in the administrative rule. So the other things, and we could put setbacks from car dealerships or bars or whatever if we wanted to, but we just took a look at the things primarily. I think it's for where children may be, and those were the things that we were looking at, and or impacts to residential development just from the potential adverse impacts of noise and odor. And I mean, there's some history of explosions depending on how they're processing marijuana, if they're using butane and if they're using heat and butane and to extract the oils.
Yeah, it could be very
Learned a lot
explosive.
about marijuana in the last.
Yeah,
last
so
6
just for instance, if you remember like our RLUIPA conversation about allowing churches in areas with like uses, that could be like a social club. If we're allowing a social club as a permitted use, then we would indeed allow a church as a permitted use. What we tried to do is form some parallels between schools and other protected uses from a reasonable standpoint, including, if you know, the predominant reason for schools, I believe, is the children. Well, what about a daycare facility? They would be having children there as well. So we tried to look at that and come up with some parallel uses for the most part, if you will, and also include those in the ordinance with some varying degrees of distance protections.
Yeah, thank you for that update. Is there any
You're
other
welcome.
new business? Is there any old business?
None that I have.
Any reason we need to go into executive session?
No.
All right, well then I will adjourn the meeting.
All
We're
right.
adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.